And I think we're about ready to start. Let me bring in my co-hosts. Hi, Hans from Indonesia, Milton, Debbie from Brooklyn. Wow, so many people from around the world.
Thank you, Lawrence. That voice has been Lawrence Casimir from his home in Modi'in. Hi, I'm Jay Shofet, here with the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel. We welcome you all from all the continents and all the states and cities and islands that you're joining us from. HaChavra L'Hagadat HaTeva here with our weekly webinars. This night, we are really thrilled to have Alon Rothschild. He is our head of biodiversity policy here at SPNI and director of the Blue Half project for marine conservation, which you will hear about. And really, as the title said, it will be a deep dive into the world of marine biodiversity and conservation. We're all really looking forward to it tonight. Welcome all of you here. Let you know that we on our website you can find all of these webinars if you've missed any that we've had for the last couple of months and we'll be having for the foreseeable future. They're all online for you to visit. Please ask your questions at about 8:40, 8:45. Alon will start answering some of the questions. Lawrence and I will be posting to him from all you panelists here in the chat feature and on the Q&A. I think we're about ready to go. We have a lot of people here, and we thank you all of you panelists, visitors, especially thank Leon Sokol, our board chair from New Jersey, who's been a devoted participant and observer of these webinars. Thank you, Leon and Maggie, and all of you from everywhere, near and far. Thanks so much. We'll be talking to you on the other side of Alon's talk in 40, 45 minutes or so. So Alon, thank you very much for your being with us here tonight, and we look forward to hearing about marine conservation and biodiversity.
Thank you, Lawrence and Jay. Just a second. Okay. So, hi everybody and welcome. We're gonna dive this evening into the secrets of the Mediterranean Sea. And I'm going to talk mostly about what's so amazing about the sea and a bit less about what we do about it, because I have a short period of time to talk about it. And I think that I want to amaze you first with why it's so amazing, and only afterwards maybe speak a little bit about what we do to conserve it. And maybe some of you wanted to come here to hear this talk because you want some advice about how to be stuck in your home during the Corona isolation. And you know, the best one to speak about it is the hermit crab, because you know they are stuck in their homes their entire lives. But we're not going to talk about it because we humans should deal with our own problems, and we want to deal with the marine life's problems a bit more extensively. So the Blue Half is SPNI's marine program, and we do a lot of stuff. We've started 8 years ago about fisheries management. We have dived in the past 3 years more into marine nature reserve. We are dealing with endangered species protection, and lately a lot of activity about oil and gas exploration, which are booming in our Mediterranean. And most people in Israel, I mean, maybe you feel that you don't know a lot about Israeli marine life, but actually most of Israeli citizens don't really know anything. At the left-hand side of this video, people know the coast. They know a bit, you know, like the first few meters that they can swim inside, but nobody in Israel really have dived into the Mediterranean Sea itself, let's say beneath 6 or 7 meters. So you're really in a very good company with the majority of the Israeli public, which think that basically that's a big blue bucket of water and they don't really know what's inside. So we are going to take a deep dive into it and try to get to know it. So that's your time to take a deep breath because we are diving in. And when I was a child, in each and every one of the classrooms in the schools, this is the map that used to be on the wall. And that was the land of Israel, right? I mean, and nobody told us that actually this is the real map of Israel and that Israel actually has a blue half, 26,000 square kilometers, which are both territorial waters and exclusive economic zone, but it's more than the continental area of the country. So that's a huge gap in knowledge and awareness that we're trying to fill in the past few years. And when I was a child, again, when somebody used to tell you, I want to see some nature, some marine life, he used to tell us, okay, go south to Eilat, to the Red Sea and dive into it. And because that's where you can see some nature, some marine life. But the truth is that the Mediterranean Sea is booming with amazing life, sponges and starfish and tunicats and skates and seahorse and lots of other amazing marine wildlife. And I'll just show you a quick video just as an introduction to what we can find in the Mediterranean. It's in Hebrew, but you have some English subtitles over there.
אנחנו הישראלים מתים על הים. ומה אנחנו עושים בים? חוץ מזה, אנחנו שומרים. חבר'ה, יש מצב שאתם שומרים לי רגע? שומרים, שלא נישרף, שלא נתלכלך, שלא נלך לאיבוד.
אמא של גלי, הבת שלך מחכה לך בסוכת המצילי.
רק על הים אנחנו לא ממש שומרים. יותר נכון על מה שבתוכו. הים המופלא שלנו הולך ואוזל. מתחת למים שלנו יש טבע מטורף. ספארי ענק של בעלי חיים, צמחים, שוניות. הים הוא לא אותו הים בכל מקום. העולם המופלא שתמצאו מטר מחוף השרון שונה לגמרי מהים של ניצנים או מהים של עתלית. וזה רק בעומק 15 מטרים מתחת לפני הים. תראו מה קורה בעומק 100 מטרים. כשצוללים פנימה, מגלים עמקים, רכסים, קניונים, דיונות. בים שלנו יש יותר מ-50 בתי גידול שונים עם מינים ייחודיים שחיים רק כאן.
Okay, so that was just a quick introduction. I'm gonna look into it right in the next few minutes. But just a short zoom out and what is the Mediterranean Sea? So this is the Mediterranean Sea. It's actually a closed sea which has only one natural opening to the ocean, to the Atlantic Ocean, which is here in the Gibraltar Straits. And it's home to 17,000 species. But the most amazing fact is that a quarter of those species are actually endemic. They are unique to the Mediterranean, which is a bit surprising because basically we get the water from the Atlantic Ocean. So why is it the Mediterranean so special that is home to such a high percentage of unique life? And the answer is that it's not really exactly the same water. This is in Hebrew, but you can see that this is a diagram of the Mediterranean Sea here and the Atlantic Ocean here. And this is the Gibraltar Straits. And you can see that only the top shallow water can actually penetrate into the Mediterranean and to start circulate. And that is why only the most saline and warm waters of the ocean penetrate the Mediterranean. And as this drop of water goes east and travels towards the Levant or the Israeli coast, it turns warmer and more saline and actually very poor in nutrients. And that is why the Mediterranean as a general, but especially the eastern part of the Mediterranean, where Israel is located, it's actually kind of a marine desert because it's very warm, it's saline, and it's very poor in nutrition materials. And like I said, most Israelis, when they think about the Mediterranean Sea, that's what they see. They see a blue mass of water filled with jellyfish, but there's actually much more to see in the Mediterranean than jellyfish. These are a few pictures of what we can find, meters from the Israeli coast. And we have really a special and unique nature. We have abrasion platforms, which is actually a unique habitat of what happens to a reach, which is eroded by the waves. We have deep water corals, which are actually in complete darkness. We have sponge gardens, and we have a very unique phenomenon of sharks, which are concentrated near our power plants because they like the warm waters that comes out of it. So yes, Israeli Mediterranean Sea is a desert, but it has lots of oases of like I said, sponge gardens and deep water corals and sharks and sea turtles and much more. And we can see some of it now. Basically and very roughly, you can divide the Mediterranean habitats into two general different ecosystems. The first are the rocky reefs, which is very solid and they are more diverse. And they are kind of like 20% of the Israeli Mediterranean Sea. And the rest is actually sandy bottom, a very soft sandy bottom, which is very challenging for most of marine life because they don't have a solid place or niche to cling into, and they are very challenged by the masses of currents and waves that are driving them up and down the current. But this is that was a very rough and primitive, you can say, division. And actually, we have underwater topography, just like above water. So if we can see, this is the northern part of Israel. This is Mount Carmel above sea level. And this is the Zvulun Valley. And this is the ridge near Rosh Hanikra in the border with Lebanon. But you can see actually that those colors and those features are actually underwater, and they are underwater topography. And here we have the underwater Carmel mountain. We call it the Blue Carmel. We have this ridge, underwater ridge. We have a canyon, the Achziv Canyon. So we have lots of different landscapes and habitats that creates, of course, different biodiversity hotspots. And if we just look specifically on the canyon, on the Achziv Canyon, you can see that this is the ridge of Rosh Hanikra. This is actually the border with Lebanon. You can see here the army base, which is separating Israel and Lebanon. But underwater, we have this, this is the Rosh Hanikra site itself, but you can see that underwater, we have a deep canyon that goes down to a depth of 1,200 meters with a totally different life than what we can see above sea level. So we have identified 60 different habitats in the Israeli Mediterranean Sea, but the main problem is that only 3% of those habitats are actually protected in MPAs, in marine protected areas or marine nature reserve. And this is a very sharp deficit if we compare it with the continental picture, because above sea level on the continent itself, we have something like 19 or 20% nature reserves of the Israeli area, but on the Mediterranean Sea, only 3% are actually protected, and which is, of course, very, very poor and a situation that we must change. And this is our vision. We want to balance between the land and the sea, and we want to reach 20% at least of the Mediterranean Sea, which is going to be protected in no-take marine reserves. And we think that this is one of the main tools to protect the Israeli Mediterranean Sea. So, like I said, our mission is to make the Mediterranean Sea great again. Like somebody maybe said, it's a small paragraph, paraphrase, but really that's what we want to do. We want to highlight and persuade policymakers that Mediterranean Sea is not second to the Israeli land, and we should protect it very, very rapidly and extensively. And that's the plan. That's the outline plan that we are promoting along with the Israeli Nature and Parks Authority, which is the government authority of nature protection. And let's dive a bit into the different reserves that we want to designate. So I've already mentioned the Blue Carmel. That's the view that you can see in the land, in the terrestrial Mount Carmel. And that's what you can see if you look down into the sea beneath. But if you look at the animals that we have on land, on the terrestrial part, you can see a deer, you can see a griffon vultures, but inside the land, you can see, inside the sea, a few kilometers from there, you can see different landscapes and different animals. What you're looking at now are actually animals, that's not plants. These are sponges, sfogim in Hebrew, and it's actually one of the most ancient multicellular animals that there are on the planet. And you can see this, somebody told me that this looks like a bit like the coronavirus, but it's not, it's a sponge. And just a short video to tell you about the uniqueness of the Blue Carmel.
בזמן האחרון יש דיבור באזור חיפה על העיר התחתית. רואים שמשהו טוב קורה שם. אני רוצה להראות לכם אותה. את העיר התחתית האמיתית של חיפה. היא נמצאת כאן ממש מאחוריי, מול הכרמל, בתוך הים. חוץ מבחלקים שבהם הוא כחול. אתם מבינים? חצי מהכרמל נמצא בתוך המים. אם תרדו מסטלה מאריס לכיוון בת גלים ותמשיכו לתוך המים, תמצאו את עצמכם בתוך שמורה. ברוכים הבאים לכרמל הכחול, העיר התחתית האמיתית. שמורת ראש הכרמל מגיעה עד לעומק של 300 מטרים מתחת לפני הים, והיא בדיוק תמונת ראי לרכס שעולה לכיוון האוניברסיטה. דמיינו שאתם צועדים על גבי אזור סלעי מתון יחסית ודורכים על מצע עצות רך. כשממשיכים מערבה ולמטה, כבר צריכים ציוד סנפלינג כדי לרדת בקירות תלולים שמזכירים את שוויצריה הקטנה, רק בתוך הים. במדרונות האלה לא תמצאו עצי חורש כמו בכרמל היבשתי, אלא שוניות סלעיות מכוסות בגני ספוגים צבעוניים ומרהיבים. הכרמל הכחול עשיר בבתי גידול מגוונים המציגים טבע פראי. במקום יחמורים, ציפורים מרהיבות וחתולי ביצות, תפגשו חתולי ים שנאספים לרבייה, ועדרי דגים שמשוטטים בשונית הסלעית. טבע מופלא. וכל העושר הזה נמצא במרחק נגיעה מהמרכז האורבני של חיפה. פארק טבע...
Okay, so that's what just half of the video. You can check out the full videos in our website. But I just want to show you another maybe interesting thing, probably only in Israel. This is maybe 2 kilometers from the city of Haifa, but just beneath the water. You can see army shells that were probably dropped down from some kind of a vessel. And you can see that the marine life has have adopted these army shells and have actually made it their home. So here in Israel, we can actually make the best out of stuff like that as well. But yeah, that just a bit in a humor tone. We are going now, that was the blue caramel near the city of Haifa. We are going now south, a bit to the direction of the southern border towards the Gaza Strip. And this is the Eftach Marine Dune Park. And this is actually what you can see in this marine nature reserve, a reserve that has not been designated yet. We're working on it. But it looks a bit boring, but actually you can see all those small holes, and there's something inside the sea floor that is worth checking out. And sometimes you really have to look very carefully to understand where you can see the marine life. I hope that you can see the stingray here in the picture. You cannot? Okay, you start to see it now, and that's it, it's gone. Because on the sandy bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, you really have to be very, very sharp in your sight in order to detect marine life, and they are amazing once you see them. And this is a diagram of what you can see in the sandy bottom floor of the sea. You can see soulfish, dag solit in Hebrew. Sometimes they call it Moshe Rabbeinu fish, the fish of Moses. You can see here a very special type of a sea urchin. In Hebrew, it's called levav mitchaper. You can see here a sea pan. It's a close relative of the corals, and they are all very sensitive organisms that live inside or on top of the sandy bottom. And again, a short video just to get to know a bit better the Eftach Nature Reserve.
אנחנו בדיונות שבין אשדוד לאשקלון, פארק ניצנים. מזכיר קצת את החולות שבהם צילמו את גבעת חלפון. כמו שאמר סרג'יו, ימין ושמאל רק חול וחולרה. זהו שממש לא, יש פה דיונות חול מרהיבות, חיות נדירות, צמחייה עשירה. אם תעלו על חליפת צלילה במקום על החליפה של היומים, תגלו שהמקום המופלא הזה ממשיך עד לים. זו ממש תמונת ראי של פארק החולות. רק בתוך המים. פארק חולות ימי. החולות כאן מכוסים בים, ששוחים בו דגים, דולפינים וחתולי ים. השמורה גם משמשת כפעוטון לצבוני הים שרק בקעו. וכשמביטים למעלה, רואים עופות ים שצוללים למים ושולים דג לארוחת צהריים. תעבוד, גבר! עכשיו, זה לא סתם חול. המצע הרך יכול להיות גם קשוח. יש בו מלא חיים. תיעדו כאן קרוב ל-700 מינים של יצורים ימיים. ממש שיכון לדגים צעירים.
Okay, I just want to stress that all the pictures that you see in this talk are from the Israeli Mediterranean Sea. We have not imported anything from the Bahamas or from Seychelles. And we move deeper into the Peleg Sponge Garden Reserve, another reserve that we are trying to designate right now in the planning committees. And that's a deeper dive into an area which we call the mesophotic area. It's an area of the twilight zone where you don't see much light, but it's not dark, totally dark. And again, it's a place that sits on a sandy ridge. These are the sandy ridges that we can see on the Israeli coast. And it's a very popular place to visit. And you can see here the trail mark. But not many people know that inside the sea, there are also sandy ridges like that, but they are covered with other stuff. And if we have the terrestrial animals like the bee eater or the snail or this iris with this wild bee, inside the sea, we can actually see the same geological ridge, but covered with other life, mostly sponges. And the sponge gardens of the Peleg area are actually magnificent. You can see here all those colors and different shapes are all sponges. These are actually eggs of a cuttlefish that has laid its eggs on this yellow sponge. And here you can see the starfish on top of a sponge. So the sponges are actually the basis, the foundation of this ecosystem. So what's a sponge? A sponge is actually a multicellular, very primitive animal. that is comprised of lots of cells that are filtering the water. They have like a short flagellum that moves very rapidly and creates a vacuum, and that's why the water from outside of the sponge enter the sponge and pass through a net that is capturing all the small food particles. And just to demonstrate it, this is not from Israel.
Fluorescein.
This is not from Israel, but you can see that this diver is releasing fluorescein. It's a marker, and you can see that the sponge is actually capturing it and takes out all the material. But if it was food, the sponge would capture the food particles inside, and that's how it actually feeds. So the sponge are actually, we call it the underwater hotels, because they are actually home to numerous wildlife. Some live on top of them, some like this snail or like the starfish or this crab, but some actually live inside the small cavities, the rooms in this hotel, like this small brittle star. And you can see that in one photo, you can see a lot of different sponge species. You can see this black one and this gray one, lots of different species of sponges. Each has its own color and shape and biological story and features. And not only sponges, we can also see lots of other marine life that comes to enjoy this underwater ecosystem, like this octopus, an amazing animal. Bye-bye. Now it's gone, but you can see that the basis, the foundation of what's on this ridge are all different sponges. And you can see also here, this is a very interesting sponge. You can see it's in the shape of a barrel, actually empty barrel, and lots of different fish and other crustaceans. They find shelter and home inside this sponge. And now, finally, we dive into the deep sea, an area called the Palmachim disturbance, to the deep coral gardens and the cold methane seeps. It's an ecosystem that was only discovered less than a decade ago using high-tech robots that go down more than 500 meters below sea level. So basically what we saw up until now was like the shallow waters up until 100 meters deep. But now we dive into the deep sea, and we find lots of interesting marine life that are all living in complete darkness and use all kinds of strategies in order to survive over there. So this fish, it's called in Hebrew the chakai. I can't remember the English name, but it has like a bait, a very fluorescent bait that attracts prey and then finds itself inside this fish stomach. You can see here this crab that also uses bioluminescence, and this cuttlefish that also uses lights in order to communicate. And the Palmachim disturbance is actually a huge area in which the bottom of the sea was moved into deeper sea. It's kind of like a scar in the sea floor, and what you can find there is something that we cannot find in any other place in Eastern Mediterranean Sea. A short video to show it.
מתחת ל-200 מטרים, היכן שקרני השמש כבר לא מגיעות, מתחיל מה שנקרא הים העמוק. ולמרות שמדובר במקום חשוך, עם טמפרטורות נמוכות ולחץ אטמוספרי אדיר, יש בו חיים עשירים ומשגשגים. אפשר למצוא כאן נוצות ים וסרטנים, אלמוגים נדירים בסכנת הכחדה, דיונונים וקרישים. ככל שמעמיקים, פוגשים ביצורים שלא ראו מעולם אור יום ולא תלויים בשמש. אלמוגי הים העמוק למשל ניזונים משאריות, חלקיקי מזון והפרשות של בעלי חיים שנושרים מהמים העליונים אל עומק הים. תופעה זו מכונה גם שלג ימי, כי היא נראית כפתיתים לבנים הנושרים מטה. הם מפרקים את הנשורת והופכים בעצמם לבסיס מאגרי המזון של הים העמוק. ויש גם יצורים שיודעים לייצר אנרגיה לגמרי בעצמם. למשל חיידקים ייחודיים, שיודעים לנצל לטובתם את תרכובות המתאן שמבעבעות ונפלטות מקרקעית כדור הארץ. אלה מהווים ענף נפרד לחלוטין מעולם החי המוכר לנו, ועל בסיסם מתקיים מארג מזון שלם.
Okay, so that was the deep coral gardens, which are very, very rare and are all endangered. And they also attract lots of other sea life that uses this underwater forest, if you will, as a shelter and home. And also, very interestingly, on the water column above this benthic habitats, there is a very special apex predator that comes there once a year to spawn, and that's the Atlantic bluefin tuna. Here it comes, an amazing fish that is also endangered and comes here to the Palmachim disturbance in the Israeli exclusive economic zone to spawn and to reproduce. I'm gonna just briefly mention that we want a healthy sea, not just because it's beautiful or because we nature lovers like to see it, but also because the sea is also a very, very prominent feature in the way to combat and to mitigate climate change. And we call it blue carbon. Actually, half of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is captured in the photosynthesis process of tiny algae, and also because small animals like those foraminifera are actually building their skeleton using carbon from the air that is dissolved in the water. So the ocean is a huge carbon sink that helps us to mitigate climate change. And if we want to mitigate climate change, we definitely want to keep a healthy sea beside us. Also, the ocean is a huge pharmacy, and 65% of active materials in medicine are actually based on compounds found in living organisms. And the most prominent producer of active medicine materials are actually sponges. And you can see here a few examples of the actual medicines that were designed according to materials from the ocean. And I'll just mention that also, you know, that Israel is a very densely populated country, and it's not hard and not easy to find a place to leisure and to stay and see some nature. But actually, the Israeli Mediterranean Sea is the biggest park and safari that you can actually have in Israel. And you can see here education activities and professional divers that come to actually explore the marine life in Israel as an ecotourism branch, which was not fully developed up until now. And finally, a reminder that we should try and maintain a healthy sea, because once we don't do it, the sea responds. And what you see here are a lot of jellyfish that have exploded and jammed the power plant near the coast, and actually jammed their cooling system that has tried to use the seawater as a cooling apparatus, but the jellyfish have flourished because we are overfishing the sea, and they have jammed it, and that costs lots of money. And once we have a healthy sea, we also have a risk management system. So very, very briefly, what are the threats that we have to address? So up until, let's say, 20 years ago, the majority of the pressures on the Israeli Mediterranean were at the shoreline. Power plants, buildings, stuff like that, ports and the marinas. But in the past 2 decades, there was an explosion of development in the Israeli Mediterranean, lots of gas explorations, fishing, infrastructures, and that's what we have to tackle. And the most problematic action is actually fishing, or what we call overfishing. Because if the oceans used to look like this on the left-hand side of the picture with a full complex food web, because we have fished out the majority of the big fish, the predators, and we have moved down the food web, we are now having much less rich sea with lots of small fish, and we have a vacuum on the top predators area. And when you have a vacuum in nature, somebody fills it, and the ones that fill it are jellyfish and invasive species. And what you can see here is a graph that show you that over exploitation, especially fishing, is the most problematic action that humans cause the sea. And that's how it looks. And that is the reason why SPNI is investing a lot of its efforts in trying to minimize and mitigate the fisheries sector in Israel. And we are not against fishermen. I have to stress that out. We are not against fishermen, but we have to try and manage this action in a way that will leave some place for the fish and marine life to flourish. So fishing is not a selective action. You can see here a sea turtle in X-ray, and you can see here the fishing hook that was stuck in its mouth. You can see here what we call a booby, sula, a bird that was stuck with a fishing net rope in its beak. You can see here a very tragic incident in which a sea turtle and a dolphin were both captured inside the fishing net. And you remember that there are both animals that are breathing free air. They're not they don't have gills. They don't breathe underwater, and they were both unable to go to the surface, and they were both actually suffocated to death. Overfishing is a very problematic issue. I'll just show you a short video. The most problematic method is actually bottom trawling. And the majority of the catch from bottom trawling actually goes back to the sea, but it's dead because it's not selective. And what you can see here is actually fishermen dealing with the catch after fishing. And you can see that the majority of the catch actually goes back dead into the sea, and only a minor portion of the catch is actually good enough to sell it, and it goes to the right-hand side to one of the those buckets. So bottom trawling is actually a very, very problematic fishing method. It's not selective. It's actually a huge net that is dragged on the sea floor and is capturing everything in its way. Of course, disrupting the habitat as well, and disrupting marine life. And what we have done, I'm really summarizing 6 years of work in one slide, but what we have done is we were able, after a very intensive campaign, free appeals to the High Court, and a lot of lobbying, we were able actually to pass fisheries reform in the parliament, in the Knesset, in the year 2016. And we have closed 40% of the Israeli Mediterranean Sea to bottom trawling. And we have actually were able to get 20 million shekels from the Ministry of Finance as compensation to the fishermen. And some of those vessels were actually sunk as diving sites. So you can see here that ecotourism and fisheries management are actually combining together. And those regulations also set the tone and the, Sorry, something has happened. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I just had to start again, Alon.
Yeah, okay. Just a second. Where we are, okay. I hope you can see that. Okay, so those regulations all actually have set for the entire fishing fleet where, when, how, and how much to fish. And we are very proud on this accomplishment. I don't have a lot of time left, so I'll just highlight a few other features that we are dealing with. Habitat destruction, of course, in terms of infrastructures, pollution, especially microplastic and the risk of pollution from oil and gas exploration. Climate change, this is just an example to see that the purple sea urchin in Israel, the Kipod Yam Sagol in Hebrew, is actually declining because Israeli summer is now, we now have 30 degrees Celsius in the summer in the Mediterranean waters, and the sea urchins are just dying once the temperature reaches 30 degrees Celsius, and invasive species from the Suez Canal. So what we are trying to do is actually to make sanctuaries, which are marine nature reserve, in which you don't have fishing, you don't have habitat destruction, and you don't have pollution. And then the ecosystem is much more resilient to deal with climate change and invasive species. And this amazing invention is called the Marine Nature Reserve. So marine conservation, basically the most basic pillar in marine conservation are marine nature reserve. And once you have a reserve, you have a huge increase in density of marine life, in the size of the animals, in the biomass, and in diversity. And we have tried to show normal people what is the meaning of those increases in percentages, and we have translated it into an annual increase. And we have told ourselves, let's say we will invest in the stock market in a company which is called the Marine Nature Reserve, and we have tried to make to show it next to other very strong companies in Israel, like Mobileye, like Microsoft, like the Poalim Bank, and you can see that the percentage annual growth of marine nature reserves is actually very close to Mobileye, which is a very big company in Israel, high-tech company. It's more than Microsoft, so it's a very good investment. I really encourage everybody here to invest in marine nature reserves because the outcomes are amazing. You can just see here a few pictures from the Rosh Hanikra Marine Nature Reserve, and you can see that sea life responds very, very rapidly to the fact that fishing has been banned, and you can just dive into the water and see that marine life are actually booming, from sea turtles to fish to lobsters to marine mammals. Everybody is just coming to have a feast in the marine reserve. The three basic keys for successful reserve are for a reserve to be big, to have a fishing ban, no fishing, and to have strong enforcement. And you can see that when an area is fully protected, you can see lots of fish and especially lots of big predators. And when an area is not protected or protected partially, you can actually see much less fish and almost no big predator fish. And that's very important because not only marine life needs the entire food web and the big fish, but also ecotourism. Because if you have a very big grouper, for example, dakar in Hebrew, a very big grouper fish that, let's say, 3 feet long, you can have one fisherman enjoying it, or you can have 50 divers enjoying it each and every day, 365 days a year. So the most economic thing to do is to keep those big fish inside the reserve, inside the water, and for the general public to benefit from it, and not just one fisherman. And this is actually from the United States, from Florida Keys, but you can see here how it works. This is the borders of the reserve. You can see here the fishing vessels, and they are all what we call fishing the line. They are waiting for the fish to reproduce inside the reserve and to spill over outside. So you can see here, that's how it works in New England, Atlantic Ocean. And the best thing to do is to have inside the reserve tourism, education, and research, and outside the reserve to have the fishing, and do not mix the two of them because it just doesn't work. And that is one of our most ferocious battles with the fishermen, because we try to keep them out of the reserve, and up until now we have succeeded. And to conclude, I've talked a lot about marine nature reserves, but we are also trying to protect very specific and very important species, and this is the flagship species of the Mediterranean Sea. That's the dusky grouper. It's very important, but also very endangered because of overfishing. And the reason that it's so important is because it's regulating the entire food web. And once you have the groupers and the other predators inside the ecosystem, you have the grazers on very low numbers, and then you have the algae forests blooming. Once you fish out the groupers and the other predators, you have a boom of grazers, of grazing fish, and then you have a marine desert, and the entire food web collapses and is destructed. And that's why we're trying to protect top predators like the dusky grouper, and we have tried to declare it as a protected animal in Israel. And we have almost succeeded, but at the last stage, the Minister of Environment unfortunately have decided to take it out of the protected animals list. And we have appealed to the High Court, and we hope that maybe the High Court will try and help us in reversing this decision and putting the dusky grouper back in the protected species list. And last but not least, we are trying to work with the public. And the public, we have launched a very special application, cellular application called the Sea-Watch. Sea-Watch actually enables, it's free of charge. You could download it from the App Store or Google Store. And if you see a marine hazard, somebody fishing illegally or whatever, you can actually report it. It goes online to us, but also to the rangers that enforce the fishing ordinance. And we have lots of cases in which, because of a public report, an illegal fishing actually became an enforcement activity, and people got fines and went to court because of a citizen that was aware, reported in the application, and we have closed the circle into the rangers and to the enforcement bodies. So, just to conclude, our Mediterranean blue half is beautiful, it's diverse, it's unique, it supports human well-being and Israeli society, but it needs protection. We are trying to reach 20% of the Mediterranean Israeli Sea as a no-take marine reserve, to declare groupers as protected species, to complete the fisheries management reform, and to buy out all the entire bottom trawlers and to halt actually the bottom trawling in the Israeli Sea, not just 40%, 100%, and of course to prevent pollution and to mitigate infrastructure damage, especially the oil and gas industry in our waters. So that's it. It was a bit fast, but I'm trying to get inside the time frame. You can check out all the videos that I've showed you with subtitles in our website, in this link attached here. And that's it. Thank you. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer.
Hi, Alon. That was really superb. Thank you so much. So I think everyone was listening really rapidly because there really weren't too many questions. So I expect people will stop listening and start typing questions to us. There's lots of thank yous from people in the chat. And I'll just say that Alon, when you support SPNI, Alon is really one of the professionals who you are supporting. You know, you enable his vision, his drive to happen, to make a change over really years. Like this whole marine thing, this whole marine conservation work is really Alon's baby, and he made it happen from something which wasn't at all on the radar to like an active part in Israel's you know, conservation dialogue. You know, we have marine protected reserves mainly because of Alon's work. And really, Kol Hakavod Alon, like it's really amazing to be able to work with someone like you who can make these things happen over a long period of time. And thank you to everyone who, you know, who's supporting us and making this happen. Like it's as much your victory and much as a result of your work as it is ours. Anyway, on to the questions. Question very early on: do we have shark attacks in Israel?
Not until today. We do not have the bigger sharks like the great white sharks in Australia, so we do not have those very frequently in Israel. We did have one incident in the fish cages. We have one site of fish cages inside the Mediterranean, and a shark was entering the cage, and one of the workers was trying to take it out and was bitten in the hand. So we actually made a joint project with the fish cages, and we have outlined the plan for them to take out the dead fish on a daily basis in order to try and prevent the smell of dead fish to be in the waters, so to minimize the conflict between sharks and humans. But up until now, we did not really have a shark attack, but I hope that's going to stay the same answer in the near future.
Okay, that was, I would say, an easier question, because I think even I think I knew the answer to that one. But what about the impact of desalination on wildlife?
That's a very good question. We really don't know enough. There were a few monitoring programs to try and understand the impacts of desalination and effluents on the marine life. They did not see anything substantial, but the fact that they've not discovered it, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. But I cannot specify anything that was discovered up until now. So that, for me, it's an open question. Okay.
I know that when we discussed this this webinar, that you said we're not talking about Eilat, but I have had a few questions about, are there protected marine reserves in Eilat?
Well, actually, we have a very one of the most the oldest marine nature reserves in Israel is in Eilat, in the coral reef. And actually, Eilat, just want to say that the coral reefs in Eilat are very, very important globally. And that's because they did not suffer up until today bleaching periods. You know, bleaching is this disease that hurts corals all over the world. And Eilat, up until today, has not suffered bleaching events. The reason is probably because it's already on a warmer climate, and the importance is because maybe if in other places in the world corals are going to die, maybe Israeli corals are going to be the ones to actually rehabilitate corals in other places. So yes, we have a marine nature reserve in Eilat, and it's very important even globally.
Awesome. One question was, do you need to scuba dive to see all these fish, or can you just snorkel and enjoy some of the marine life?
Definitely you can snorkel, especially on marine reserves. You can just snorkel and see tons wildlife. I just want to share with you an experience. When I was a student, I was guiding this course in which we were mentoring kids from Jaffa. And we went with them to the beach, and we just went 1 meter depth, and we put our heads in the water, and we saw an octopus. So, and the kids were, you know, they would just went crazy. So definitely you can see lots of animals in the sea without scuba diving. But of course, to see the really cool stuff, you don't only need to scuba dive, you actually need to have robots. And most of what I've showed you today on the videos was actually from robots. ROVs are remotely operated vehicles.
Oh, wow.
Alon, just to follow up on that, people want to know which beaches would you recommend? How do people see, if they want to snorkel and see marine life in the Mediterranean, where would they go?
In Israel?
Yeah, in Israel, in the Mediterranean.
Well, currently we have only one decent nature reserve in Israel, which is Achziv Rosh Hanikra at the north tip of the country near the border with Lebanon. So that's the best place to go because it's a marine nature reserve for the past 20 years. So life has been able to replenish itself over there. Other places are more harmed by fishing, but also you can see near Haifa in Bat Galim coast, right next to the city, and also in Poleg, in the area of Netanya, in the area of Chof Sharon, also very good place to snorkel and to see lots of marine life.
Interesting.
We're getting thoughts. Jay, do you want to ask a question? Or?
No, go for it, Lawrence. I have a couple more, but I'll do that before we close up shop.
We've got lots and lots of questions about sewage from Gaza and the impact on marine life, obviously in Israel.
Well, I have to be frank and to say that we are not very professional in dealing with sewage issue in SPNI. We mainly focus on fishing, infrastructure, and stuff like that. There are effluents from Gaza, but and they impact the southern part of Israel. But I can say that in one of the marine reserves that we are trying to promote, the Eftach one, the Dune Park near Ashdod, we don't see traces of significant amounts of effluents. So it's a problem, but hasn't been a major one up until today. Of course, it's a matter of time until something happens, and if we have an oil spill or something like that, that's a different issue.
Okay, I guess leading on from that, what's the impact of the natural gas drilling on the marine life?
Very good question. Up until now, nothing serious has happened. But at the moment, we have a major struggle. If you remember, I've showed you the amazing pictures from the deep coral gardens and the cold seeps in the Palmachim disturbance. It's an area in the exclusive economic zone. Very sensitive, very unique. We want to make it a marine reserve. And the Ministry of Energy have issued an exploration license to a Greek company for oil and gas exploration right at this area. And we are now at the moment trying to work with them. We are in dialogue with them for the past 6 months and probably are going to file an appeal against the Ministry of Energy, probably in the next in the next month, in order to try and exclude the sensitive area from the exploration license. So potentially, up until now, there hasn't been major impacts, but potentially once you have a leakage or something terrible like the Deepwater Horizon accident, and it can happen, you want to make sure that those exploration sites are as far as possible that you can have from the coast and from sensitive hotspots.
Okay. another sort of on that theme, what work do we do, and I guess Israel as a country does with international cooperation with other countries which border the Mediterranean, including, I guess, the European countries, but also some of the Arab countries like Lebanon and Egypt?
Not much. We are not in warm collaboration with neither of our marine neighbors. So I can't really say anything about it. SPNI is a partner in a few projects of the EU. For example, the Sea-Watch application that I've showed you is actually sponsored partly by an EU project. So we do have collaborations with EU partners, but it's not really like you would have expected to have like joint marine parks or stuff like that. So unfortunately, the geopolitical situation is a bit of a difficulty in terms of collaboration.
Fair enough. I'm going to ask you, and we have lots of questions about just the wildlife. So I'm going to ask you a question about cooperation closer to home. So what's our relationship with the like the Sea Turtle Center, the Sea Turtle Rehabilitation Center?
But first of all, we are collaborating with them. For example, in the Sea-Watch application, one of the features that you can report is actually if you've seen an injured sea turtle or a nest. And we had a few cases in which citizens have reported an injured sea turtle, and rangers from the Sea Turtle Rehabilitation Center they get it into their cell phone, so they came immediately and they took those turtles and rehabilitated them. And also a few cases in which people have reported nests, and then again the rangers come and they transfer the eggs to a secure site. But I think that the most important thing to remember is that as much as the Sea Turtle Rehabilitation Center are doing magnificent and amazing work, we try to focus on trying to tackle the drivers for turtle loss. And you know, it's very hard to put back a injured sea turtle back into the ocean, but the real mission is to try and keep it there and not coming back a returning customer to the rehabilitation center. So we try to minimize bottom trawling, which kills 1,300 turtles every year. We try to tackle gill nets, which kills 1,700 turtles each year. We try to tackle seismic surveys of gas and oil explorations, which also might injure sea turtles. We try to keep the fishermen out of the coasts in the season, in the spring, when the turtles are coming to nest in the coast. So that's the real, and of course, marine nature reserves. So you can say that we are trying to minimize their customers, basically. And once we tackle a customer, an injured turtle, we try to report it and for them to cure it.
Right. We had a question about what type of whales and dolphins do we see around Israel?
I'm not sure I'm going to say all the English names correctly. We have basically two prominent species of dolphins here: the short beaked bottlenose dolphin, and the common dolphin, which is not really common. Whales, we have really incidental sightings. It's not something, we had an orca 6 weeks ago, but it's really incidental. It's not something that we want to see here because it says that those whales are unfortunately usually lost. Yesterday, I just got, before the start of this webinar, we just had a sighting of monk seal in Achziv Nature Reserve yesterday. Wow. So we do have, basically you can say that the residents here are the two species of the dolphins, and the other mammals are actually incidental.
Okay. And I think the last question for now, though, if anyone has more questions, just send it to me at international@spni.org.il, and I'll forward the questions on to Alon. Do SPNI organize any scuba trips or snorkeling trips?
No, not really. I mean, we do have a few like eco tours that passes near the sea, and maybe some snorkelings, but actually that's not really my division. It's the education division, so I might be mistaken here. We are in charge of the policy stuff, but not really as a very organized thing, because there are lots of very complicated insurance things. So the best way to check those things out is really through the scuba diver operators, and I mean that's the best way to try to get a glimpse into the Mediterranean Sea.
Yes, I know there are quite a lot of scuba diving operators, because I tried to sort one out for my wife to swim with the sharks. I wasn't successful, but they definitely are out there. I think thank you very much everyone for all those questions. As I said, any questions that we didn't answer, I think touched on nearly all the issues.
I have one more, Lawrence, about the Aswan Dam.
Go for it.
Lawrence, can you turn on my video and I'll wrap up, ask one more question. Alon, you're still with us, right?
Yeah.
So a couple people asked about the effect of the Aswan Dam on the water that flows from the Nile into the Mediterranean just south of Israel. I know it affects the beaches and the sand. Does it affect the biodiversity?
Well, there is actually an open debate. We used to say that because of the dam, less sand goes to the sea, and then it goes out of the balance, and some of the beaches are getting destroyed. But probably that's not true, because today most researchers say that there are enormous stocks of sand on the Nile Delta, and that should feed the Israeli coast for many, many decades. And the most destructive thing to the coast is actually marine infrastructures like docks and marinas and harbors, because they actually block on the local level, they block the sand. In terms of nutrients, that's the big story, because the Aswan Dam has blocked a lot of the nutrients that used to flow from the terrestrial Africa into the ocean, and actually supports marine life. And this desert that I've talked about, the Mediterranean desert, that actually has is poor of nutrients. So the Aswan Dam has actually derived the Eastern Mediterranean from a very important source. So we know that that's very influential, but we don't really know exactly how and why. There is a professor in Haifa University, Professor Danny Chernov, who actually is actively researching it. So probably in a few years we'll have some answers, but that's definitely the bigger issue, the nutrients and less the sand.
Wow, very, very interesting. Alon, thank you so much. We all enjoyed it so much. There were so many compliments and firgun on the questions. A really great presentation. I want to answer one more question that came up a few times about the Sea-Watch app. And I have it open on my phone, and it's not just about fishing. You can report on if there are injured sea animals, if there are what we call ghost nets, like nets that are floating around. Solid for garbage and stuff you see on the sea and in the beaches, pollution that you see happening, and invasive species. So there's a lot of different ways we use the Sea-Watch app, and it helps people report on all kinds of hazards and problems on the beaches and in the water. So anyway, thank you very much for that, for all your work with the marine conservation. I should also say Alon is, as I introduced him, the Biodiversity Policy Director of SPNI. That's not just about marine life. He wrote last year a fascinating report on afforestation in Israel. And if you're interested on why Israel is and why and whether Israel is planting the correct trees in the correct ecosystems and how that affects climate change and our biodiversity. That's a fascinating report you can find in English on our website as well. I encourage you to look at that, and want to thank Lawrence for all the back office help as usual. We'll be doing these webinars for the rest of the month, every week, and then in June, from June, we'll be doing them every 2 weeks. Maybe we'll get Alon on again to talk about something else, or to even do a deeper dive. There's a lot of questions that we didn't ask you, Alon, on all kinds of specific issues. Are lionfish entering through the Suez Canal? I think somebody asked, for example. Is that a problem?
Very big problem, yeah.
Big problem. Somebody knows they're invasive species, I guess. So yes, there are lots of problems and lots of challenges we haven't discussed, and things are always dynamic. So I'm sure if you gave this talk in 2 months, there'd be other issues to talk about, and who knows what's happening with the gas platforms and all that. Anyway, guys, to support us, please, you can do so online at natureisrael.org. There's a donate button. We appreciate, especially in this time when SPNI is suffering from lack of revenue because most of our activities, all of our activities have been stopped. Our field schools are empty, and all our educational work has been stopped. Schools are just getting back, but the educational activities, the environmental activities aren't yet. So we're hunkering down and slowly in Israel beginning to get back to normal. The nature protection work, though, has never stopped. Alon and his colleagues working in biodiversity and nature protection have been working throughout the Corona period to make sure that when we all get back out, nature will be in the place to protect nature that we've always been, and nature will be able to bloom and flourish with us being outdoors and active economically and otherwise. And that's the balance that we're looking to make for everybody. So anyway, thank you all very, very much for joining from all over the world. It's a pleasure. This is recorded. It will be probably online very soon afterwards. So send it to your friends. And thanks very much, Alon. Thanks, Lawrence.
Thanks, Alon.
Signing off from Tel Aviv.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.